About this time, 19 years ago, 40 individuals, mostly strangers, were coming to the realization and formulating a plan that they needed to take action. By this point in the morning, many aboard Flight 93 were aware that the World Trade Center and the Pentagon had been struck by airliners. Galvanized with this information, these strangers came together in this national moment of uncertainty. Their choice to make a difference that morning has continued to resonate with people around the globe. It is fitting that we take this moment to pause and remember those individuals who unknowingly sacrificed their own lives and saved the lives of countless others at 10:03 a.m. when United Airlines Flight 93 impacted the Earth. The site of the impact now marked with a boulder. As we reflect this morning on the 40 passengers and crew members, I welcome my former colleague, Mary Jane Hartman, who recently retired as the Chief of Interpretation, Education, and Visitor Services here at Flight 93 National Memorial, to lead the reading of their names. As each name is read, Andrea Damon and Roy Caven, both retired FBI special agents and respective senior team leaders for the Pittsburgh and Cleveland divisions of the evidence response teams on September 11th, will ring the bells of remembrance in their memory.
Christian Adams. Lorraine G. Bay. Todd M. Beamer. Alan Anthony Bevan. Mark Bingham. Diora Frances Bodley. Sandy Waugh Bradshaw. Marion R. Britton. Thomas E. Burnett, Jr. William Joseph Cashman. Georgine Rose Corrigan. Patricia Cushing. Captain Jason M. Dahl. Joseph DeLuca. Patrick Joseph Driscoll. Edward Porter Felt. Jane C. Folger. Colleen L. Fraser. Andrew Sonny Garcia. Jeremy Logan Glick. Kristen Osterholm White Gould. Lauren Catuzzi Grancolis and unborn child. Wanda Anita Green. Donald Freeman Green. Linda Gronland. Richard J. Guadagno. First Officer Leroy Homer. Toshia Kuge. Cece Ross Lyles. Hilda Marson. Waleska Martinez. Nicole Carol Miller. Louis J. Nackey II. Donald Arthur Peterson. Jean Hoadley Peterson. Mark David Rothenberg. Christine Ann Snyder. John Talignani. Honor Elizabeth Wainio. Deborah Jacobs Welsh.
Please join me in a moment of silence as we conclude this moment of remembrance. Thank you. This morning, I am honored to introduce Mr. Ed Root. Mr. Root currently serves as the Vice President for the families of Flight 93. He is joined on stage today by his wife, Nancy. Ed's cousin, Lorraine Grace Bay, was a senior flight attendant on Flight 93. Those closest to Ed know of his personal passion for sharing the history of the American Civil War as both an author and historian. He served on the jury to select the winning design of the Flight 93 National Memorial in 2005, and since 2006, Ed has served on the board of directors for the families of Flight 93. Throughout the memorial's creation, Mr. Root has served on numerous committees within the Flight 93 National Memorial Partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Ed Root.
Mr. President, Mrs. Trump, Father McEwen, Secretary Bernhardt, Steve, and my wife Nancy. Honored guest, family members and friends, thank you for attending today's commemoration. A common field one day, a field of honor forever. All of us who are of a certain age certainly remember that September morning when a darkness enveloped a beautiful late summer day that changed our collective lives. As the days passed and we tried to make sense of it all, some of us as family members of the heroes of Flight 93 began to come to this place. We came as strangers, strange land. We knew not each other. We knew not the members of this wonderful community. On the first anniversary of that tragic day, a large number of family members gathered to commemorate, to remember. We were housed and traveled together in that first annual ceremony in a convoy of buses. At the moment, we were beginning to know each other a little bit, to learn a little bit more about the men and women who shared those last moments of life on Flight 93. As we traveled through Somerset and Shanksville, We were surprised as traffic stopped and law enforcement and others stood and saluted as our buses passed. Many of us were taken aback as we did not feel we personally deserved such honors. This day, we as family members have been treated by local, state, federal officials, the public at large, with a respect that is sometimes awkward. We as family members do represent the heroes of Flight 93. This is and has been our only goal, to honor and remember them. This magnificent memorial, established unanimously by Congress in 2002, dedicated to the proposition that all who visit this place remember the collective act of courage and sacrifice of the passengers and crew, revere this hallowed ground as the final resting place of those heroes, and reflect on the power of individuals who choose to make a difference. We thank the National Park Service and the multitude of volunteers and friends who relate the story of the 40 heroes of Flight 93. It has been 19 years, but sometimes it seems like yesterday. The wounds never truly close completely. The memories of our loved ones linger like a mist or a soft breeze. It could be a song, a special date, a holiday, an article of clothes, a photograph, a name, and it all comes tumbling back. Some of us have crossed over the river, and a new generation has joined our family circle. It has been 19 years, and those too young or unborn on that fateful September morning come to this place, an honor to learn. The realm of history is taking over from those of us who lived and suffered through that day. The image of those rushing into the flames in New York and Washington to save others, the co-workers who helped others at the risk to themselves, the men and women who rushed here but found no one to save. It is our responsibility as a nation to see that these actions are remembered. Our work is not done, it continues. We've watched this memorial grow from that common field. We've seen the multitude of items left by visitors at the early temporary memorials. Some of those items spoke with a logic that needed no explanation. A first responder, a law enforcement badge. Some spoke of continuing service and sacrifice, Purple Hearts, combat boots, infantrymen combat badges, items earned with blood, toil, tears, and sweat. Other items seemed possibly out of place, except that visitors felt the need to leave something of themselves. It might have been something found in a pocket. It might have been a child's toy. The heroes of Flight 93 had two elements that those on the other planes and those on the ground in Washington and New York did not possess. They had knowledge, not a lot, but enough. And they had time, not a lot, but enough. And they used that knowledge and they used that time to develop a plan and implement it. They were unable to save themselves, but they knew that unless they acted, many more would die. The men and women of Flight 93 came from different backgrounds and beliefs. They were mostly Americans, but also citizens of Japan, Germany, and New Zealand. They had one very important thing in common. They all came from a belief in a free society. Those who embrace a philosophy of terror have proven over and over that they will die for their cause. Their cause is death. They build nothing. They save nothing, they produce nothing. The cause of the heroes of Flight 93 was to save life, certainly their own if possible, but they knew the cause was greater than their own lives. It's been 19 years, a lifetime for some, but a twinkling of an eye in the realm of history. We must be diligent in protecting our freedoms. We must remember and we must honor those who rushed into the flames of buildings and into the cockpit of Flight 93. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. for sharing your thoughts today and for your ongoing advocacy for the families and this memorial. I'd like to now welcome Secretary David Bernhardt, the 53rd Secretary of the United States of Interior, which include, among many others, the National Park Service and the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. Secretary Bernhardt has been a steadfast supporter to Flight 93 National Memorial and directly offered departmental support to this special place to ensure the final realization and completion of the 40 wind chimes at the Tower of Voices. We truly appreciate your support, Mr. Secretary, and thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Secretary of the Interior, Mr. David Bernhardt.
Thank you, Superintendent Clark. The Department of the Interior, through the National Park Service, is entrusted to serve as the steward and the guardian of our national parks, our monuments, and battlefields. And each site helps tell America's story, a rich and incredible story. The places we steward and protect often highlight exceptional action by incredible individuals, but none more so than this site dedicated to 40 heroes. Our sites would not tell their rich stories without the dedicated employees of the National Park Service, who I want to thank for working so closely with the families of Flight 93 over the last few weeks to bring this 19th observance to fruition. Thank you. Last night I had the incredible privilege to join some of you to participate in the chimes dedication ceremony. While there, I had an opportunity to listen to Patrick White and Gordon Felt eloquently describe the incredible reality of 40 strangers from diverse walks of life, thrown together by chance, each recognizing the challenge they faced, together uniting for a common purpose and a greater good, and then acting with dispatch and resolve against those who wished to attack our great nation. All of these events occurring over such a short period of time is absolutely incredible. Later, as I walked with Pat and Gordon up the pathway to the base of the Tower of Voices, I reflected on a fact that I have come to know with certainty while serving in President Trump's administration. And that fact is this: throughout my tenure, I have witnessed that this president has incredible confidence in and respect for the greatness of the American people. This confidence in the greatness of the American people has led him to find unity when it was not expected. It has led him to make strides forward for our country when no one thought possible, time and time again. I do not believe anyone could believe in the goodness of our country and our heroes more. And therefore, it is my tremendous honor and privilege to introduce the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, David, very much. It's a great honor to be with you. 19 years ago on this day, at this very hour on this field, 40 brave men and women triumphed over terror and gave their lives in defense of our nation. Their names and their stories are forever inscribed on the eternal roll call of American heroes. Today we pay tribute to their sacrifice, and we mourn deeply for the nearly 3,000 precious and beautiful souls who were taken from us on September 11th, 2001. To the family members of Flight 93, today every heartbeat in America is wedded to yours. Your pain and anguish is the shared grief of our whole nation. The memory of your treasured loved ones will inspire America for all time to come. The heroes of Flight 93 are an everlasting reminder that no matter the danger, no matter the threat, no matter the odds, America will always rise up, stand tall, and fight back. To every 9/11 member all across this nation, the First Lady and I come to this hallowed ground, deeply aware that we cannot fill the void in your heart or erase the terrible sorrow of this day, the agony renewed, the nightmare relived, the wounds reopened, the last treasured words played over and over again in your minds. But while we cannot erase your pain, we can help to shoulder your burden. We promise that unwavering love that you so want and need, support, devotion, and the very special devotion of all Americans. On that September morning when America was under attack, the battle turned in the skies above this field. Soon after taking off from Newark, New Jersey, radical Islamic terrorists seized control of United 93. Other hijacked planes struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center, and then the South Tower, and then the Pentagon. The terrorists on Flight 93 had a fourth target in mind. It was called our nation's capital. They were just 20 minutes away from reaching their sinister objective. The only thing that stood between the enemy and a deadly strike at the heart of American democracy was the courage and resolve of 40 men and women, the amazing passengers and crew of Flight 93. Donald and Jean Peterson were grandparents traveling to vacation in California. Diora Bodley was a student headed back to college. Richard Wardagdo was returning from celebrating his grandmother's 100th birthday. Lauren Catozzi Grancolis was 3 months pregnant with her first child. Every passenger and crew member on the plane had a life filled with love and joy, friends and family, radiant hopes, and limitless dreams. When the plane was hijacked, they called their families and learned that America was also under attack. Then they faced the most fateful moment of their lives. Through the heartache and the tears, they prayed to God. They placed their last calls home. They whispered the immortal words, "I love you." Today those words ring out across these sacred grounds, and they shine down on us from heaven above. When terrorists raced to destroy the seat of our democracy, the 40 of Flight 93 did the most American of things. They took a vote, and then they acted. Together they charged the cockpit. They confronted the pure evil, and in their last act on this earth, they saved our capital. In this Pennsylvania field, the 40 intrepid souls of Flight 93 died as true heroes. Their momentous deeds will outlive us all. In the days and weeks after 9/11, citizens of all faiths, background, colors, and creeds came together, prayed together, mourned together, and rebuilt together. The song, "God Bless America," became a rallying cry for the nation. We were united by our conviction that America was the world's most exceptional country, blessed with the most incredible heroes, and that this was a land worth defending with our very last breath. It was a unity based on love for our families, care for our neighbors, loyalty to our fellow citizens, pride in our great flag, gratitude for our police and first responders, faith in God, and a refusal to bend our will to the depraved forces of violence, intimidation, oppression, and evil. In New York, Arlington, and Shanksville, people raced into the suffocating smoke and rubble. At Ground Zero, the world witnessed the miracle of American courage and sacrifice. As ash rained down, police officers, first responders, and firefighters ran into the fires of hell. On that day, more than 400 first responders gave their lives, including 23 New York City police officers, 37 Port Authority workers, and 343 New York City firefighters. Today, we honor their extraordinary sacrifice and every first responder who keeps America safe. With us today is David D'Amato, a retired Chicago police officer and a current officer of the Navy Reserves. On 9/11, he drove from Chicago to Ground Zero. As David says, while the sights and smells of working at Ground Zero will forever be etched in my mind, what is more profound is the way this country came together afterwards. The police officers and firemen were revered as the heroes they truly are. The military was appreciated in a manner not seen in decades, and common people found new meaning in values like friendship, kindness, and selflessness. Thank you, David. Such beautiful words, and thank you to every member of law enforcement who risks their lives to ensure our safety and uphold our peace. This morning, we also remember the 183 people who were killed in the attack on the Pentagon and the remarkable service members who crawled straight through the raging blaze to rescue their comrades. We express our undying loyalty to the nearly 6 million young men and women who have enlisted in the United States Armed Forces since September 11th, 2001. More than 7,000 military heroes have laid down their lives since 9/11 to preserve our freedom. No words can express the summit of their glory or the infinite depth of our gratitude, but we will strive every single day to repay our immeasurable debt and prove worthy of their supreme sacrifice. America will never relent in pursuing terrorists that threaten our people. Less than 1 year ago, American warriors took out the savage killer and leader of ISIS, al-Baghdadi. Soon after, our warriors ended the brutal reign of the Iranian butcher who murdered thousands of American service members. The world's top terrorist, Qasem Soleimani, is dead. Here in Shanksville, this community locked arms and hearts in the wake of tragedy. With us today is Chuck Wagner, a heavy equipment operator who lives just a few miles away. Very soon after the attack, Chuck helped search for the black box. He was so changed by what he experienced that he joined with several members of his church to become what they call ambassadors for the 40 men and women on Flight 93. Chuck and his neighbors learned about each person, cared for their families, and each day, rain or shine, they took shift standing vigil over their final resting place. Long before this place was a national memorial, back when it was marked by a simple wooden cross, Chuck and his fellow ambassadors were always here waiting to tell visitors about those we lost. 19 years later, Chuck says his life is devoted to three things: his family, his church, and preserving the memory of the men and women of Flight 93. to Chuck, his wife Jane, thank you very much, thank you very much. To Chuck and his wife Jane, thank you so much for being here, and to the over 40 ambassadors with us today, please stand and receive America's thanks. And this is a very deep thanks, please. Thank you very much. Also with us is Marine veteran Jason Thomas from Long Island. On September 11th, Jason had just retired from the Marines, but he immediately put back on his uniform and raced into the nightmare of ash and debris. At Ground Zero, he found a fellow Marine, Dave Carnes. Together they began to call out, "United States Marines, United States Marines." If you can hear us yell, tap, do whatever you can do with the United States Marines. Soon they heard a shout for help. 2 police officers were trapped beneath 20 feet of rubble. Jason and Dave dug for hours on end, knowing that at any moment the wreckage could come down on them, crushing them alive. At one point, someone told Jason to stop. Jason replied, "I'm a Marine. I don't go back, I go forward." That day, Jason helped save the lives of those 2 officers. For years, Jason said nothing about what he did on 9/11. He did not even tell his 5 children. But when he saw a rescue recounted on TV, he decided to meet those officers. One of them gave him a gift, a steel cross made from a beam that Jason helped lift to free them from the hell on earth. As Jason said about the cross, it means a lot. It's a symbol of what we are as Americans, because that day we all came together and stood as a nation, as Americans. It didn't matter what race you were, what religion you were. It didn't matter. We all came together to help one another. I die for this country. I die for this country. Jason, thank you very much for bearing witness to the character of our nation. Jason, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jason. The men and women of Flight 93 were mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, husbands and wives. Nothing could have prepared them for the dreadful events of that morning. But when the moment came, when history called, they did not hesitate, they did not waver. 40 towering patriots rose up, took charge, made their stand, turned the tide, and changed the course of history forever. Our sacred task, our righteous duty, and our solemn pledge is to carry forward the noble legacy of the brave souls who gave their lives for us 19 years ago. In their memory, we resolve to stand united as one American nation, to defend our freedoms, to uphold our values, to love our neighbors, to cherish our country, to care for our communities, to honor our heroes, and to never, ever forget. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the heroes of Flight 93. God bless all of the families. 9/11, we'll never forget. God bless you all, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, thank you so very much for those moving and inspirational words. As we conclude here this day together, we do indeed remember and honor the the 40 passengers and crew members of Flight 93 in this special and unique ceremony. As we go our separate ways, may we carry the memory of how they came together on that day to make our nation and world a better place for all. At this time, I would like to ask all attendees to remain in their seats as we prepare for the ceremonial wreath laying. I would ask that the Flight 93 ambassadors and dignitaries remain seated immediately following the wreath laying ceremony to allow time and space for the families of Flight 93 to walk to the Wall of Names and through the ceremonial gate to the sacred ground. Once again, thank you all for joining us today to honor the memory of the passengers and crew of Flight 93. Thank you.
19 years later, it still can rip your heart out. And I just appreciate you making this time for our family. Please get home safe, and thank you so much.
Thanks for sending me. Appreciate it. All right. Hey, I'll see you Monday. All right. See you, Bob. Good to see you. Nice job.
just wanted to know what this lens can do. Like if you were zoomed in all the way to the podium with your Doppler, do you clear the two frontals? So 75 feet is about it. Yeah, no, no. You guys got Daniel, he's a young buck. He can jump up and down. Let's do some box. Hey, thank you for the power. We can probably get it signed for you. As long as we have a girl's phone number attached to it, then you don't understand.
A. Moss.
Marco Matroni,
Cynthia Modis Wilson.
Yuri A. Mushinsky,
Jude Joseph Musa.
Peter Mutos, Damian O'Neill Mowat,
Teddington H. Moy. Christopher Michael Mazzillo.
Stephen Vincent Mulderi,
Richard T. Muldowney Jr.,
Michael D. Mullen. Dennis Michael Mulligan.
Peter James Mulligan. Michael Joseph Mullen.
James Donald Munhall.
Nancy Muniz, Francisco Eladio Munoz, Carlos Mario Munoz,
Teresa Munson.
Robert Michael Murak,
Cesar Augusto Murillo. Mark A. Marolo. Brian Joseph Murphy. Charles Anthony Murphy.
Christopher W. Murphy,
Edward Charles Murphy.
James F. Murphy IV,
James Thomas Murphy.
Kevin James Murphy. Patrick Jude Murphy. Patrick Sean Murphy.
Raymond E. Murphy.
Robert Eddie Murphy Jr.
John Joseph Murray.
John Joseph Murray. Susan D. Murray.
Valerie Victoria Murray,
Richard Todd Meyer,
Louis J. Nacky II,
Robert B. Nagel.
Mildred Rose Naiman,
Takuya Nakamura.
Alexander John Robert Napier,
Frank Joseph Naples III. John Philip Napolitano.
Catherine Ann Nardella,
Mario Nardone Jr.,
Manika K. Narula.
Sean M. Nassani, Narendra Nath,
Karen Susan Navarro.
Joseph M. Navis,
Francis Joseph Nazario,
Glenroy I. Neblett,
Raymond Marcus Neblett,
Jerome O. Ned,
Lawrence F. Nadell,
Luke G. Nee,
Pete Negron, Lori Ann Nera,
Ann N. Nelson,
David William Nelson.
Ginger Risco Nelson,
James A. Nelson,
Michelle Ann Nelson,
Peter Allen Nelson,
Oscar Francis Nesbitt.
Gerard Terrence Nevins,
Renee Tetral Newall, Christopher C. Newton,
Christopher Newton Carter,
Nancy Yuen Go, Kang Gok Nguyen, Jody Tepedino Niccolo,
Kathleen Ann Nicosia,
Martin Stewart Niederer,
Alphonse Joseph Niedermeyer,
Frank John Neistat Jr.,
Gloria Nieves, Juan Nieves Jr.,
Troy Edward Nilsson, Paul Nimbley,
John Valentine Niven,
Catherine McGarry Noack,
Curtis Terrence Noel,
Michael A. Noth,
Daniel R. Nolan,
Robert Walter Noonan,
Jacqueline June Norton, Robert Grant Norton,
Daniela Rosalia Notaro, Brian Christopher Novotny,
Soichi Numata,
Brian Nunez,
Jose Nunez,
Jeffrey Roger Nussbaum.
James A. Oakley,
Dennis Patrick Oberg, James P. O'Brien Jr., Michael P. O'Brien,
Scott J. O'Brien,
Timothy Michael O'Brien.
Daniel O'Callahan, Dennis James O'Connor Jr.,
Diana J. O'Connor,
Keith Kevin O'Connor,
Richard J. O'Connor, Amy O'Doherty,
Marnie Pont O'Doherty, Douglas E. Olschlager,
Takashi Ogawa,
Albert Ogletree,
Philip Paul Odnabeni,
John A. Oganowski,
James Andrew O'Grady,
Joseph J. Ogren,
Thomas G. O'Hagan,
Samuel Otis,
Patrick J. O'Keefe, William O'Keefe,
Gerald Michael Alcott, Gerald Thomas O'Leary,
Christine Ann Olander,
Linda Mary Oliva. Edward K. Oliver.
Leah Elizabeth Oliver,
Eric Taub Olson, Jeffrey James Olson,
Barbara K. Olson.
Maureen Lyons Olson.
Stephen John Olson.
Matthew Timothy O'Mahony. Toshihiro Onda. Seamus L. O'Neill.
John P. O'Neill. Peter J. O'Neill, Jr.
Sean Gordon Corbett O'Neill.
Betty Ann Ong.
Michael C. Opperman.
Christopher T. Orgielowitz.
Margaret Quinn Orlowski. Virginia Ann Ormiston.
Ruben S. Ornado.
Kevin M. O'Rourke.
Ronald Orsini. Peter Keith Ortale.
Juan Ortega Campos.
Jane Marie Orth.
Alexander Ortiz.
David Ortiz.
Emilio Pete Ortiz.
Pablo Ortiz.
Paul Ortiz, Jr. Sonia Ortiz.
Masaru Ose.
Patrick J. O'Shea.
Robert William O'Shea.
Elsie Carolina Osorio Oliva.
James R. Ostrowski.
Timothy Franklin O'Sullivan.
Jason Douglas Oswald.
Michael John Auden.
Isidro D. Ottenwalder.
Michael Sean Wu.
Todd Joseph Owida.
Jesus Ovias.
Peter J. Owens, Jr.
Adianis Oyola.
Angel M. Pabon, Jr.
Israel Pabon, Jr.
Roland Pacheco.
Michael Benjamin Packer.
Diana B. Padro.
Deepa Pakala.
Jeffrey Matthew Palazzo.
Thomas Palazzo. Richard A. Palazzolo.
Oreo Joseph Palmer. Frank Anthony Palumbo.
Alan N. Palumbo.
Christopher Matthew Panettiere.
Dominique Lisa Pandolfo. Jonas Martin Panic.
Paul J. Pansini. John M. Paolillo.
Edward Joseph Papa.
Salvatore T. Papasso.
James Nicholas Papa George.
Marie Papalardo.
Vinod Kumar Parakat.
Vijay Yashankar Paramsoti.
Nitin Ramesh Varankar. Harday Parbu.
James Wendell Parham.
Deborah Marie Harris.
George Harris.
Gi Hyung Park. Philip Lacey Parker.
Michael Elaine Parks.
Robert E. Parks, Jr. Hashmukh C. Parmar. Robert Paro.
Diane Marie Parsons.
Leobardo Lopez Pascual.
Michael J. Pascuma, Jr.
Gerald Hughes Haskins.
Horace Robert Passamanti.
Suzanne H. Pissarro.
Avnish Ramanbai Patel.
Dipti Patel.
Manish Patel.
Stephen Bennett Patterson. James Matthew Patrick.
Manuel D. Patricino.
Bernard E. Patterson.
Clifford L. Patterson, Jr.
Sarah Marie Patty.
Robert E. Patterson.
James Robert Paul.
Patrice Paz. Victor Hugo Paz.
Stacy Lynn Peak.
Richard Allen Perlman.
Darrell Pearsall, Jr.
Thomas Nicholas Pecorelli.
Thomas Pedicini.
Todd Douglas Pellino.
Mike Adrian Pelletier.
Anthony G. Peluso. Angel R. Penna.
Robert Penninger.
Richard Al Penny. Salvatore F. Pepe.
Carl Allen B. Peralta. Robert David Peraza. John A. Perconti, Jr.
Alejo Perez.
Angel Perez, Jr.
Angela Susan Perez.
Anthony Perez.
Ivan Antonio Perez. Nancy E. Perez.
Barry Berenson Perkins.
Joseph John Parancino.
Edward J. Parata.
Imelda H. Perry.
Glenn C. Perry, Sr.
John William Perry.
Franklin Allen Pershing.
Danny Pesci.
Michael John Pesherin.
Davin N. Peterson.
Donald Arthur Peterson. Jean Hoadley Peterson.
William Russell Peterson.
Mark James Petroselli.
Philip Scott Petty.
Glenn Karen Pettit.
Dominic A. Pizzulo.
Kayleen Elizabeth Pizzuti. Kevin J. Pfeiffer.
Tuan Pham.
Kenneth John Phelan, Sr.
Sneh Ann Phillip.
Eugenia McCann Piantieri.
Ludwig John Picaro. Matthew Picerno.
Joseph O. Pick.
Christopher J. Pickford.
Dennis J. Pierce.
Bernard Petronico.
Nicholas P. Pietrunti.
Theodoros P. Geith.
Susan Elizabeth Pinto.
Joseph Piscadlo.
Christopher Todd Pittman. Joshua Michael Piver.
Robert R. Ploger III. Zandra F. Ploger.
Joseph Plumatalo.
John M. Poche.
William Howard Pullman.
Lawrence Michael Paulich. Thomas H. Polhamus.
Steve Policino.
Susan M.
Polio.
Darren H. Pontel.
Joshua Ayusa Popteen.
Giovanna Porras.
Anthony Portillo.
James Edward Cotorti.
Daphne Paletsis. Richard N. Polis.
Stephen Emmanuel Poulos.
Brandon Jerome Powell.
Scott Allen Powell.
Sean Edward Powell.
Antonio Dorsey Pratt.
Gregory M. Preziosi.
Wanda Evelise Prince.
Vincent A. Princiata. Kevin M. Pryor.
Everett Martin Proctor III.
Carrie Beth Progen.
David Lee Pruin.
Richard A. Prunty.
John Puckett.
Robert David Pugliese. Edward F. Pullis.
Patricia Ann Puma.
Jack D. Punches.
Hemant Kumar Putter.
Joseph J. Heisier Jr. Edward R. Python.
Christopher Quackenbush. Lars Peter Qualden.
Lincoln Quape.
Beth Ann Quigley.
Patrick J. Quigley IV.
Michael T. Quilty.
James Francis Quinn.
Ricardo J. Quinn.
Carol Millicent Rabelais.
Christopher Peter Anthony Braccanello.
Leonard J. Regalia. Eugene J. Raggio. Laura Marie Raganisi Snick.
Michael Paul Ragusa.
Peter Frank Ramundi.
Harry A. Rains.
Lisa J. Rains.
Etasham Raja.
Valsa Raju.
Edward J. Raw.
Lucas Rambusek.
Maria Ramirez.
Harry Ramos.
Vishnu Ramsarup. Deborah A. Ramsauer. Lorenzo E. Ramsey. Alfred Todd Ranke.
Adam David Rand.
Jonathan C. Randall. Shreyas S. Rangana.
Ann T. Ransom. Faina Rappaport.
Rhonda Sue Rasmussen.
Robert A. Rasmussen.
Aminia Rasul. R. Mark Rossweiler.
Marsha D. Ratchford.
David Allen James Rathke.
William Ralph Robb.
Gerard F. Rousey.
Alexei Razuvai.
Gregory Rita.
Sarah Ann Redheffer.
Michelle Marie Reed.
Judith Ann Reese. Donald J. Regan. Robert M. Regan.
Thomas Michael Regan.
Christian Michael Otto Reaganhard.
Howard Reich.
Greg Reedy.
James Brian Riley.
Kevin O. Riley.
Timothy E. Riley.
Joseph Reyna Jr. Thomas Barnes Rennig. Frank Bennett Reisman.
Joshua Scott Reese.
Karen Renda. John Armand Rio.
Richard Cyril Rescorla.
John Thomas Resta.
Sylvia Sanpio Resta and her unborn child.
Martha M. Reski.
David E. Reddick.
Todd H. Rubin. Luis Clodoaldo Ravila Mir.
Eduvigis Reyes Jr.
Bruce Albert Reynolds. John Frederick Rhodes.
Francis Saverio Riccardelli.
Rudolph N. Riccio.
Anne Marie Riccaboni.
David Harlow Rice.
Eileen Mary Rice. Kenneth Frederick Rice III.
Cecilia E. Richard. Vernon Allen Richard.
Claude Daniel Richards.
Gregory David Richards.
Michael Richards.
Venetia Orincia Richards.
Jimmy Riches.
Alan J. Richmond. John M. Rigo.
Frederick Charles Remley III.
Rose Mary Riso.
Moise N. Rivas.
Joseph R. Ravelli Jr.
Carmen Alicia Rivera.
Isaias Rivera.
Juan William Rivera.
Linda Ivelis Rivera.
David E. Rivers.
Joseph R. Reverso.
Paul V. Ritza.
John Frank Rizzo.
Stephen Lewis Roach.
Joseph Roberto.
Leo Arthur Roberts.
Michael E. Roberts.
Michael Edward Roberts.
Donald Walter Robertson Jr. Jeffrey Robinson.
Mitchell Lee Jean Robotham.
Donald Arthur Robson. Antonio A. Rocha.
Raymond James Rocha.
Laura Rockefeller.
John Michael Rodak.
Antonio Jose Rodriguez.
Anthony Rodriguez.
Carmen Milagros Rodriguez.
Gregory E. Rodriguez.
Marcia A. Rodriguez.
Myra Valdez Rodriguez.
Richard Rodriguez.
David Bartolo Rodriguez Vargas.
Matthew Rogan.
Jean Detrion Roger.
Carly Rogers.
Scott William Roner.
Keith Michael Roma.
Joseph M. Romanolo. Ephraim Romero Sr.
Elvin Romero.
James A. Romito.
Sean Paul Roney.
Eric Thomas Ropito.
Aida Rosario. Angela Rosario.
Mark H. Rosen.
Brooke David Rosenbaum.
Linda Rosenbaum.
Cheryl Lynn Rosenbaum. Lloyd Daniel Rosenberg. Mark Lewis Rosenberg. Andrew Ira Rosenblum. Joshua M. Rosenblum.
Joshua Allen Rosenthal.
Richard David Rosenthal.
Philip Martin Rosenzweig.
Daniel Rossetti.
Richard Barry Ross.
Norman S. Rossenow.
Nicholas P. Rosamondo.
Michael Craig Rothberg.
Donna Marie Rothenberg.
Mark David Rothenberg.
James Michael Rue.
Nicholas Charles Alexander Rowe.
Edward V. Rowenhorst. Judy Rowlett.
Timothy Allen Roy Sr.
Paul G. Brubeck.
Ronald J. Rubin.
Joanne Rubino.
David M. Ruddle.
Bart Joseph Ruggiere.
Susan A. Ruggiero.
Adam Keith Ruhalter.
Gilbert Ruiz.
Robert E. Russell.
Stephen P. Russell.
Stephen Harris Russin.
Michael Thomas Russo Sr.
Wayne Allen Russo.
William R. Ruth.
Edward Ryan.
John Joseph Ryan.
Jonathan Stephen Ryan.
Matthew L. Ryan.
Tatiana Rishova.
Christina Sanga Rook.
Thierry Sada.
Jason Alazar Sabag.
Thomas E. Sabella.
Scott H. Saber.
Charles E. Sabin Sr.
Joseph Francis Sacerdote.
Jessica Lee Sachs.
Francis John Sudoka.
Jude Elias Safi.
Brock Joel Sofronoff.
Edward Saya.
John Patrick Salamone.
Marjorie C. Salamone.
Hernando Rafael Salas. Juan G. Salas.
Esmeralyn Antonio Salcedo.
John Pepe Salerno.
Rama Sali and her unborn child.
Richard L. Salinardi, Jr.
Wayne John Solomon.
Norbert Solomon.
Catherine Patricia Salter.
Frank G. Salvatera.
Paul Richard Salvio.
Samuel Robert Salvo Jr.
Carlos Alberto Samaniego.
John P. Sammartino.
James Kenneth Samuel, Jr.
Michael San Philip.
Hugo M. Sine.
Alva Cynthia Jeffries Sanchez.
Jacqueline Patrice Sanchez.
Jesus Sanchez.
Raymond Sanchez.
Eric M. Sand.
Stacy Lee Sanders.
Herman S. Sandler.
Jim Sands, Jr.
Aileen J. Santiago.
Kirsten Reese Santiago.
Maria Teresa Concepcion Santillan.
Susan Gail Santo.
Christopher A. Santora.
John August Santor.
Mario L. Santoro. Rafael Humberto Santos.
Rufino C.F. Santos III.
Victor J. Saraceni.
Callion K. Sakar.
Chappelle Renee Stewart Sarker. Paul F. Saul.
Deepika Kumar Satuluri.
Gregory Thomas Saucedo.
Susan M. Sauer.
Anthony Savas.
Vladimir Savinkin.
John Michael Sparborough.
David M. Scales.
Robert Louis Scandol.
Michelle Scarpita.
Dennis Scauso. John Albert Short. John G. Scharf. Fred C. Sheffield, Jr.
Angela Susan Scheinberg.
Scott Mitchell Schertzer.
Sean Shelkey.
Stephen Francis Schlag.
Robert A. Schlegel.
John Schlissel.
Karen Helene Schmidt.
Ian Schneider.
Thomas G. Scholes.
Frank G. Schott, Jr.
Gerard Patrick Schrang.
Jeffrey H. Schreier.
John T. Schrader.
Susan Lee Laspa Schuler.
Edward W. Schunk.
Mark Evan Schermeyer.
John Burkhard Schwartz.
Mark Schwartz.
Adrian Victoria Shabetta.
Raphael Skorka.
Janice M. Scott.
Randolph Scott.
Christopher J. Scudder.
Arthur Warren Scullen. Michael H. Seaman.
Margaret M. Seeliger. Anthony Segara. Carlos Segara.
Jason M. Sexer. Matthew Carmen Salito.
Michael L. Sells.
Howard Selwyn.
Larry John Cinco.
Arturo Angelo Sereno.
Frankie Serrano.
Marion H. Serva. Alena Seshinova.
Adele Christine Sessa.
Sita Nirmala Sunarin. Karen Lynn Seymour.
Davis Greer Cessna, Jr.
Thomas Joseph Scroy.
Jayesh Shantilal Shah.
Khalid M. Shahid.
Mohammed Shah Jahan.
Gary Shamai.
Earl Richard Shanahan. Dan F. Shanauer.
Neil G. Shastri.
Catherine Ann Shatzoff.
Barbara A. Shaw.
Jeffrey James Shaw. Robert John Shea, Jr.
Daniel James Shea. Joseph Patrick
Shea.
Kathleen Shearer, Robert M. Shearer,
Linda June Sheehan,
Hagai Sheffi,
Antoinette M. Sherman,
John Anthony Sherry,
Atsushi Shiratori,
Thomas Joseph Schubert, Mark Schulman,
C. Wong Shum, Alan Abraham Schwartzstein,
Clarence Shelley Siegel Schwartz.
Joanna Sigmund, Diane T. Signer and her unborn child,
Gregory Sikorsky, Stephen Gerard Siller,
David Silver,
Craig A. Silverstein,
Nasima H. Simji,
Bruce Edward Simmons,
Diane M. Simmons,
Donald D. Simmons,
George W. Simmons,
Arthur Simon, Kenneth Allen Simon, Michael J. Simon,
Paul Joseph Simon,
Marianne LaCory Simone,
Barry Simowitz,
Jane Louise Simpkin,
Jeff Lyle Simpson.
Cheryl D. Sincock,
Kamlade Kami Singh,
Roshan Ramesh Singh,
Thomas E. Sinton III, Peter A. Syracuse,
Muriel Siskopoulos,
Joseph Michael Sisolak,
John P. Scala,
Francis Joseph Skidmore Jr.,
Toyena Corliss Skinner,
Paul Albert Skirpek,
Christopher Paul Slattery, Vincent Robert Slavin,
Robert F. Sliwak,
Paul Kenneth Sloan,
Stanley S. Smagala, Jr.,
Wendy L. Small,
Greg H. Smallwood,
Catherine T. Smith,
Daniel Lawrence Smith,
Gary F. Smith,
George Eric Smith,
Heather Lee Smith,
James Gregory Smith,
Jeffrey R. Smith,
Joyce Patricia Smith,
Carl T. Smith Sr.,
Kevin Joseph Smith, Leon Smith, Jr.,
Moira Ann Smith,
Monica Rodriguez Smith and her unborn child,
Rosemary A. Smith, Bonnie Shahade Smithwick,
Rochelle Monique Snell,
Christine